to approve the minutes. So I have shared report. If anybody needs for me to read it, I'll do it. If not, I'll do a motion that we waive that. No objections. We can do that. It's not public. All right. I guess we'll let our executive director give us the budget review if she wants.
I will do my best. Andy, maybe you can chime in here as well. There's still no budget. There are, I personally had hoped that the MTA would be the low-hanging fruit that was picked off first, but that is not the case. The good news is that everybody agrees that the MTA does need to be funded. There are still no agreement on how the funding is going to be achieved. So, there seems to have been, and Andy, please jump in at any time. There seems to have been some closure on the most difficult challenge, which was the bail related issues. Now there seems to be conversation on housing, and then the next large chunk of big issues include funding for the MTA. That we'll look at whether or not there is, the payroll mobility tax, corporate franchise, or some kind of corporate tax, some kind of combination of the two. How, what other kinds of additional funding will come down, whether there will also be some kind of pilot program for free buses, which is in the mix, but comes, that shouldn't come at the expense of things like increased frequency and first fund the MTA. So, I think that what we've heard and seems to be consensus is not this week. Another extender should be passed today, I believe, into next week. But that things seem to be on a path for budget for next week. So it'll be the latest budget since 2010, I believe. But as the parties who are doing the negotiations are saying they want to get it right, not get it done fast. Have I missed anything, please?
I would say the only thing I would add, 2020 was a later budget. But that we had a temporary provision passed that was more of a 6 month kick out with COVID. So
Right. Yes. That right. One of the issues. Thank you. Right. I like to forget 2020.
you're not the only one.
Right. One of the issues that's arising now certainly is that New York City's preliminary budget is due, and they're saying, and the governor has penciled them in for $500 million, which is in play also. And until the state budget is determined and the city knows how much they're getting from the state, they can't figure out what they're going to be able to contribute. Although they've already said that they will be unable to pony up to $500 million. So still a lot of moving parts, and that's why they're in Albany and we're not.
Any questions? All right, thank you. So next is the presentation by Steve Strauss, Executive Director of the Empire State Investors Association. So you're on.
Great, thanks. My name is Steve Strauss. I'm the Executive Director of a group called the Empire State Passengers Association. And in fact, we could pass these little cards around that tells you a little bit more about us. And I've been doing that for, I guess it's closing on 2 years now, or 18 months. Like Walter Zulik, I was an early employee of Metro North, but a much shorter tenure at Metro North. I worked on the first Metro North budget in 1982 and survived the Conrail strike. Then I went on to a career of about 18 years in various positions at the MTA and at New York City Transit. I ended my career in 2019 with about 11 years of service for the District of Columbia Department of Transportation, including some time serving as the District of Columbia's alternate on the Northeast Corridor Commission. So I picked up several years of getting to know about Amtrak service and that sort of stuff. So I've kind of gravitated more into intercity passenger rail. I thought in the 80s I wanted to be a transit advocate, but that field's a little crowded, and have drifted sort of more into intercity passenger rail, and have become a big fan of believing that the United States ought to have a decent intercity passenger rail service. We may never get to what Asian countries and Europe has, but we can certainly do a lot better than what we have here now, especially outside of the Northeast Corridor. So as we've been around a long time, we advocate for better Amtrak service in New York State. We're probably a little bit more focused north of the MTA region on in-park corridor service to Montreal and across the state to Niagara Falls. But I wanted to talk to you today about this area where our interests overlap, I think, pretty strongly, and that's in the Hudson Valley and on Metro North's Hudson line. A little bit of background. In 2005, you guys may know this, in 2005, Amtrak, Metro North, New York State DOT, and CSX all funded a study by Sistra to identify a list of projects and improvements in the Hudson Valley to improve service, increase reliability, allow for additional Amtrak service, improve the reliability of Metro North, and also to allow Metro North to add service at whatever point that it wanted to. And although that 2005 study is a bit dated on cost estimates, I'm told that it's still kind of the roadmap of what all those agencies still want to do in the Hudson Valley. One of the key things that it does, and then the next step is that in 2014, the next step in 2014, New York State DOT released, submitted to the federal government an environmental impact statement for the Empire Corridor, which is the Amtrak service that runs from New York Penn all the way out to Niagara Falls. And that plan proposed basically adopting most or all of the projects in the Hudson Valley that were in the 2005 plan. And then, as we all know, in 2021, Congress passed, when President Biden signed the infrastructure bill, which provided $66 billion for intercity passenger rail improvements. 22 million of that goes to Amtrak, 44 million goes to the states. So looking at the Hudson Valley, the release of the Empire Corridor EIS and the approval of it by the federal government in February meant that New York State DOT and Amtrak could start implementing the service development plan. And the service development plan calls for service improvements that you can see on that this map here, which is hopefully all of you have or take a look at, and viewers at home hopefully have the copy that was sent out to them. Well, that basically shows you a 25-year time frame for implementing this program across the state. The good news for the Hudson Valley is that the emphasis of work in the first 5 to 10 years of the program is all in the Hudson Valley, primarily because that right away is all controlled by Amtrak and Metro North, so it's a little easier. You don't have to bring CSX into the study, into the work. And it calls for adding 2 additional round trips between New York and Albany in year 3 of this program, and 1 additional round trip in each succeeding year. And to do that, we're going to have to do some of these projects so that everything will work a little better. There's still plenty to be done in the Hudson Valley and even in Metro North territory to bring everything up to a state of good repair. New York State is moving very aggressively on projects north of Poughkeepsie, where they're the primary agency responsible for improvements. And in fact, tomorrow they will be submitting applications for about 9 projects in the capital region and Hudson Valley. They're mostly right-of-way improvements, bridge replacements, signal upgrades, all those sort of standard boring things that you need to make trains run faster and more reliably. One of the interesting things about all the funding programs for intercity passenger rail and commuter rail, and I don't know if you guys have talked about this before, but at least in the statutes, there's some pretty big distinctions that FTA money can only be spent on commuter rail projects. FRA money can only be spent on Amtrak intercity passenger rail money projects. Although they do allow you to use both of those pots of money on projects that have dual benefits. So many of the things that would be done in the Hudson Valley and in Metro North Territory have dual benefits, and there is some opportunity to share some of this money and some of the projects.
So what's the start? The first company was, one was FRA, what's the other
Right,
one?
FTA, Federal Transit Administration. So that's where Metro North gets its federal formula, federal money, and sometimes discretionary federal money from the FTA. And you see this also happening with Metro North's project to bring the New Haven line into Penn Station. So the main thing I just want to talk about a few minutes with you today is how do we get these projects in Metro North Territory moving? And this little flyer, which lists the Hudson Line improvement projects, details an idea of like what these projects are and where they are. And generally, those that are south of Poughkeepsie generally be Metro North and MTA projects, although again, because of some of the shared benefit, theoretically, New York State could be involved in that. And in fact, one of the projects that New York State is applying for tomorrow is some money to look at the projects that are south of Poughkeepsie and make that determination, I think, of what percent of the benefit goes to Metro North and what percent of the benefit goes to Amtrak. And if there could be some cost sharing, maybe that's a way to advance these projects. So the biggest problem right now is that MTA lacks the local match to move these projects forward. And that's something that I've had discussions with folks at MTA about. And in fact, ESPA reached out last year to a congressman in the Hudson Valley about an earmark for getting the Poughkeepsie Yard project started. And basically, that project was, I don't want to be too negative, but Metro North, MTA torpedoed the project, torpedoed the earmark because it felt it would not have the construction money if the member of Congress provided the money to start preliminary engineering and complete the NEPA work. So that's a big problem we have.
I would say that's a very negative spin on it, considering it was not a project that is in the sequencing for now on either New York State DOT or MTA's.
20 years.
Well, it's on the 20-year assessment.
Right, it's not in
Not
the
this year's capital budget. It's not in the 5-year capital plan. It's also just something that based on the sequencing and where we're looking for earmarks and where we're requesting earmarks in coordination with DOT, it was not a priority for an earmark request at this time,
Okay,
based on sequencing.
I totally accept that. But Andy also points out one of the other issues is we don't have a good roadmap from MTA and the state about how they're going to implement this. And because they haven't made enough information, and I would say this is more of a state problem than an MTA problem, but because we don't have a good roadmap from them, other than now we have a good list of projects of how they're going to do this, it's tougher to get advocates and communities along the line, psyched up and rowing in the same direction because we don't have enough information from them on doing this. But anyway, we're excited that people are interested in moving this forward, and I just like to throw out a couple of ideas for you guys to think about and see if you want to be supportive of how could we get this moving. How can we get some of these projects in Metro North Territory moving? One idea might be encouraging MTA to develop a specific list of projects that congestion pricing revenues would fund in Metro North Territory. That it may be that some of this has come out. I've only been back in that New York region since 2019. I don't recall seeing any of this, but I think it would be a good selling point for congestion pricing if the commuter council and others could take a list of projects out in suburban areas to people who are skeptical about congestion pricing and saying, look, these are the improvements that congestion pricing is going to fund for us in, Westchester, Putnam, Dutchess, Rockland counties, Orange counties.
Called the capital plan and the 20-year needs assessment.
Yeah, there is some of that, but as we all know, not too many people are willing to dig through that. And again, we don't have a good timeline. But
I just want to interject something here as well. So when we talk about congestion pricing, we talk about the generalities of what congestion pricing could fund, because we don't want to get too specific about what it will fund, because there hasn't been that commitment. And that's, sort of one of the frustrating aspects of congestion pricing is, first of all, we don't have the money. Second of all, we don't know when it's going to start coming in and be bonded and things like that. Although some of the money's already come in, there's already, a couple $2 billion that have come in and projects that have already been funded with it. But I think that it would not behoove us to say these are the projects that will be funded. But if they're in, when the 20-year needs assessment and when the, comes out as projects are in the mix, to say things like, these are the kind of projects that could be funded, is going to set the expectations for both congestion pricing and for the outcomes, and for the way we as a council and PCAC present what we can deliver. I just wanted to put that out there.
yeah, I would just count on that. If you look at most sort of political analysts that look at things like transit referendum or even highway referendums, voters are much more responsive to and much more willing to support specific lists rather than generalities. We've had 20-year needs plans since 1980 and 5-year plans since 1982. I'm very familiar with that.
I would say that would mean it. That would be great if this was a referendum and we were in that quarter going, but this is the law of New York State at this time.
Yeah, it is the law of New York State, but there's a lot of pushback going on. So all I'm saying is, like, it would be an easier sell if people knew what they were going to get beyond, the list that's in that 20. Well, we do know that the 20-year needs plan is always fiscally unrestrained. So 5-year capital plans are not fiscally unrestrained. But again, we would have more success selling projects to communities or selling programs to communities and funding streams if they knew what they were going to get. And it doesn't have to be, we swear on a stack of Bibles, but these are the list of the 10, these are the first 10 projects, and these projects are going to move forward as the funding arrives, and assuming we don't run into any particular unusual situations that might change the priority order. But I think being more specific than the 20-year needs plan would be helpful to the process.
I don't know where we would get that commitment from, that we would then offer that was a commitment. If we went out and we said that, doesn't that put our credibility out there? I would want to say these are the kinds of projects that could be funded. I just making that differentiation, because there hasn't been a promise of specificity of what's going to be used. Honestly, that's one of the issues that we on the advocacy community have said, what's going to be funded? This is going to help us with the congressional delegation, with everybody. But there isn't that level of specificity because the capital plan isn't laid out that way, even though we wish it were. So maybe that's something we can work toward in the next plan, and saying these are the that could be in the plan development. That could be something that we look toward developing. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Yeah, I think that speaks to a broader issue of accountability that It's true across many agencies in the state. Yeah, I mean, the highway people have a little bit more developed plans, and the MTA has a much more developed plan than, say, New York State DOT in terms of what they're gonna do with rail. Again, you know, that it's up to the commuter council to do what they want. I'm just suggesting that I think if people were better informed about the specific projects that they will see in the capital plan, they would be more willing to accept, you know, the notion of congestion pricing. And yes, it's coming, but there is some pushback, and, you know, it's not a done deal until they press the button and the cameras start recording the license plates and reading the easy passes. So anyway, just in finishing up, I just, you know, wanted to point out that the good thing about these benefits in the Hudson Valley is they benefit people who travel on Amtrak all across the state. If you save, when all these are implemented, we'll save about 20 minutes traveling between New York City and Albany. We'll have 4 additional round trips in the corridor. And then even people who are traveling up to the Adirondacks on the Adirondack train, to Burlington on the Ethan Allen, and our new summer trains in Berkshires will all receive the benefits from this. And then the last thing that I thought I'd mention is I think that New York is putting itself at a little bit of a disadvantage by not paying enough attention to what Connecticut's doing on their side of the New Haven line, where they've committed to investing billions of dollars on the New Haven line to reduce travel time to New York City by 25 minutes from New Haven by 2035. And we need to be thinking about similar investments on the New York side. I'm talking more about the Harlem and Hudson lines, to stay competitive. And people can say, well, I can move to Connecticut, and the trip is, you know, I live 30 miles out in Connecticut or 40 miles out in Connecticut, and the trip is 15, 20 minutes faster. That's something that people are going to start factoring into their location decisions, both from a business standpoint and from a personal resident standpoint. So I think people need to be made aware of that situation as well. So that's kind of like what I'm pushing today. And we would welcome your support on trying to get these projects moving forward, so that we would see better service on the Hudson line that could be more reliable, a little bit faster, and allow some additional improvements extending beyond Poughkeepsie. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Thank you.
Roslyn has a question. I actually have 2 questions. Well,
Sure.
One's a comment and the other's a question. Based on everything I've read about congestion pricing, I don't think setting the expectation that, you know, the service is going to increase will have a bit of difference in people's support of congestion pricing, because I just don't see that as a solution that people are interested in funding. However, just so that I understand, when you reference communicating this people, so this information, so locals will be more supportive. Tell me exactly what when we say local, who is that? Because I'm not understanding whether you want money from the municipalities or our voters voting on it. And I'm not like a veteran railroad guy like these are, so
Sure.
you have to inform me.
No, I think this is an advocacy campaign, like advocacy for so many other things. And, you know, transit improvements, whether it be Metro North or Amtrak or even highways, we're competing against some very strong interests that are seeking money from elected officials for schools, for housing, for higher wages, all sorts of things. So
And that's the great thing about congestion pricing, as passed and is now law in the state of New York, is the dedicated income source that will help fund our bonding, make sure that transit continues to have the funding that it needs in perpetuity.
technically, that's Andy's, 100% correct. But, if you read the newspapers, I don't feel quite as comfortable about it as he does. I mean, there are opportunities for people, to play with that, and whether it works out as smoothly as we all hope, I think there's still some question about that. But even if it does work out and in 2 years, 24 months or 20 months, Jano Lieber and the governor throw the switch on the first tolling, line. You're still gonna have a lot of grumpy people especially in suburban counties and even in the borough where I live, Queens, that are like, no, they're just gonna say all the usual stuff. Oh, we're just pouring more money into MTA and what do we get out of it? Yeah, so I think there's a selling point that needs to be made to remind people, this is what you're getting. That's why they put up those signs on the highways that say your tax dollars at work. So,
I used to do that.
I just think there's a P, if you want to call it a PR effort, fine, but I think that would be useful. I think if the commuter council thinks these projects are important, they could let Metro North and MTA know that these projects are a part of a package that would improve things across the whole state. Might make some assemblyman in Syracuse, who happens to be chair of the State Assembly Transportation Committee, happy for him to know that some of his constituents who occasionally ride the train into New York City would have faster service going to and from Syracuse if he knew that these projects were going. So it's just it's the ability to show people this is what we're going to do with your money, and this is the general time frame. And also just the idea of telling Metro North and MTA capital planners that you think these projects are important. Because as we all know from the 20-year needs, there's a huge list of projects, and even with congestion pricing, we don't have the money to fund everything in the 20-year capital needs. So people have to make some decisions about what to fund.
Any questions? Yes.
But does this mean the Metro Railroad won't be extended to Albany and points above? Either supplementing, supplementing.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm
Speak a
sorry.
little louder. Thank you.
We're speaking, I apologize for that.
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, so does this mean the Metro Railroad, against on the other line, the green line, won't be extended above Poughkeepsie to supplement and replace Scantrack once and for all?
The law that has it only in its 12 counties, I think, as far as budgets, Poughkeepsie is the end. The law would have to be changed for the trains to go beyond that.
Who did you change that for?
All this,
Actually, it's just, the Dutchess County.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the government has to change it.
All the legislature that has to change it.
yes. Our legislative.
It's all one though.
Thank you. All right, anything else? Okay.
Thank you very much for
Thank you
the
for coming.
opportunity to come and chat with you up today about this.
All righty.
Well, Steve, let me ask you one question here. They have a project on New Tarrytown Pocket Track. And I'm totally unfamiliar with that, but I didn't realize Metro North turns trains at Tarrytown. I'm not sure.
Well, they turn them, so they're the ones that started everything.
Oh,
you know,
okay, so
peak hours,
it's a peak hours, maybe.
Yeah, so usually they turn the train on 102.
Right, okay, so they'll be blocking the main track. as well.
But it seems like it's a big deal.
We used to probably do that up at,
It-
or used to
yeah,
be Pike Tower up in New Haven, up in Rye, we turn trains.
If you want a little
First,
details about
that's where we're-
these projects, the study, the 2005 study is on the New York State DOT website.
No.
I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is in the high-speed rail program section.
If you find it, you gotta find a minute, just send it to the office, just like you sent this stuff.
Okay, I have it as a PDF, so I can send it to Lisa.
Yeah.
Were there any like New York State Southern tier improvements? Like out there?
Service line.
That was not covered, that was not part of the EIS. Certainly, our organization has members very interested in Southern tier rail service. The plan to extend Amtrak service to Scranton has people interested in looking at going up to Binghamton. The Scranton to Binghamton right away is in pretty good shape. and it's fairly straight and really flat, so. But frankly, there hasn't been a lot of community push on that, so if they don't step up to the plate, that's not gonna happen. And that's, I'll make just one last point, we have this huge batch of money right now from the federal government with the infrastructure bill. And another reason we really need to throw the switch on congestion pricing is to help us be more competitive on getting more of the discretionary pieces of that program. So that's another reason why we should all be like kind of very worked up right now to go after that money before it disappears or before more of it than should goes to other states that are ahead of us in preparing for it and asking for it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you taking the time to come.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I have not heard from Mr. Orange County Rich, so we have no idea about his bridge strike project. So we'll have to skip that. All right, so we're next up to social media communication update.
Yes, so this past month, we haven't gotten any direct issues about Metro North, but we also monitor the Metro North's official social media responses just to see what the biggest issues are. Some of the most pressing issues were there were a lot of delays on April 13th that got a lot of attention on multiple lines in the Bronx in the evening. A lot of people were stuck on trains. Yes, exactly. So that I think,
You're gonna hear a lot this morning too.
okay, yeah.
My boss was there.
Oh, really? Yeah, it seems
This
like
morning.
the bigger incidents caused people to be more upset. You couldn't see that over daily things.
68 delays this morning based on a power failure on the upper and lower levels. That was for
Oh,
about
there's interesting.
20 minutes and then escalating delays during the power.
How about the up at CP 61, 2 weeks ago, on the 30th, the 31st rather, to the derailment. Okay,
Yeah, it seems like the larger issues are the larger service outages like that. And then there were a few questions repeatedly about quiet car reinstatement, which we all know is still not.
I think this young lady who also would like to see the client bar, right?
Also was before, right? Yes.
Did we pass a resolution? Did we pass a resolution about that, asking for that?
We did.
We had sent letters and we've included it in testimony in the past.
I have to tell you, NJ Transit never suspended their quiet cars. They retained them all through the pandemic.
What's the resistance to the quiet?
Yeah,
I think it's about enforcement. Just that it would require,
a couple of announcements. That's all it is, a couple of announcements. That's all it is.
The passengers tend to enforce it themselves.
Yeah.
People start talking around them, they'll tell them right away. This is a quiet car.
Yeah.
yeah, but it did seem like there were, at least in the last few days, multiple tweets to the Metro North about reinstating quiet cars.
So how, Andy, how does this get put back? Who's the decider about that?
That would go through operations, so I'll reach out to Joe and Justin. and
The
find
more
out what the
people-
resistance is.
The more riders that return increases the need for the, because
Yep.
there was a time I could get on the train if there was nobody on the train. At this stage now, there are more people and just having that option would be useful.
I'll reach out and see what.
That would be great. Back to the staff about it. Okay, this was next.
And also just generally that the morning rush hour trains, particularly on the Harlem line, are becoming more crowded as ridership increases. And questions about reinstating morning express service starting at Parksdale.
So those are like the short terms that we had
I
earlier.
think we do have some expressors. I mean, we're at 98% of our service from pre-pandemic, when you're talking about different trains and how it's running, so it's not like we're not close to where we were, we're really picking up, it's nothing, so we can take a look at that. I know there's a lot of questions, some people are asking about trains getting crowded.
Yeah.
Is also a common one, but
Yeah.
a lot of times that's just because, well, we're now getting up to the point where trains have
But
more than
there's
60% of people on them.
Yeah.
So, so you know, it's where we need to be to run the railroad, so.
another aspect of this that I think the railroad should think about.
Okay.
Because now that we have this wonderful MTA app that tells you which cars are crowded or not. Because I know pretty much on any rush hour train that comes in, there is a section of that train that's not as crowded. And if people are that, right, well, it depends upon whether
Yeah.
you want to go out north exit or whatever,
Yeah.
because sometimes it's the middle. But for people, because I mean, before I got on the train this morning, as I was leaving and Randy was calling me and it's like, okay, I'm going through the train. But I knew, you know, that's just such a resource. And my problem with where we are is we do have some great resources, but
Getting
people
out there.
don't know about them, and so we need folks to know it. Because that's just like, I saw the note about Twitter kicking us off, there.
It's back now.
It's back, yeah.
But I'm saying, get the app.
Yeah.
And it's almost better not to have Twitter if you can force people to the app where there's more information. You can do everything there. I love
Yeah.
the app.
Yeah.
Kind of coming back to the delays this morning, were people making announcements on the train, like we're having delays going to Grand Central. Maybe you should get off at 125th Street and jump on the floor.
Well, most of the delays were even prior to that, it was backed up, you know, when you get there, you're still down with 4 tracks. So you sound like we're stopping the people before we're getting into Grand Central. Because it was a power issue, you know. People are being held into runs before they actually get over the bridge.
Oh, yeah, but I guess it's a matter of like,
So, but the
I could-
difference between 125th and Grand Central with these delays is really not a measurable one for like this morning's.
okay, I don't know.
But there was announcements on the trains. I was on it and there was delayed because of train traffic ahead of us. I mean,
Since
it was a short outage, but it required a manual reset, so it took about 20 minutes. It's just, you know, at that time, it becomes the cascade of events.
Kind of, not related to that, so I ride the Port Jervis line.
Yep.
And was it yesterday, I think it was yesterday, we're coming into Secaucus, and we're saying like, you know, Amtrak, New Jersey Transit delays going to Penn Station, stay on the train, and we're cross honoring and Hoboken, you know, or you can get off here and there may be 20-minute delay,
Yeah.
whatever. We actually got to Hoboken and they were like, Pat was like, cross honoring, no. We're like, so we're not, what? A lot of people were just pissed, really just.
Yeah, rightfully so.
Or it's like, you know, I'm gonna jump the turnstile, you know, people doing that too, you know, just like,
That one I can look into, that I'm not sure,
you know.
particularly how they make announcements is not something that we necessarily have up to the minute details on.
I was actually surprised because they generally don't make an app,
Oh,
but they went out of their way to say like, we are cross honoring at Hoboken.
So what do you brought
And
up
then
the
did not have-
25th Street thing before? How quickly, I have 2 questions, but that one is about, if God forbid there was a major delay getting into GCT and he said, everyone just go to 125th or court time. How long would it take to get that information over to the transit people so they will know to sell the passes and the tickets and much more? How long?
I mean, we're integrated with them. If we need to deal with cross honoring, we're set up for that. We're prepared for those types of situations. I mean, it's not something that more likely than not, it's not that we're gonna be cross honoring there. It's that if there was something that happens that shuts down the terminal, it's getting you based cross honoring from here to people up to 125th and then out doing turns. Yeah, so there's a few spots that we have those and we have plans and we drill them and we talk about all of those things in different times. So there are situations where that happens, but not on wood. You know, we keep Grand Central open and running and operating as much and on time as humanly possible, so.
Second thing, it's not a comment, it's not a complaint, it's just a question.
Yep.
So I was in Tarrytown waiting for the train.
Yep.
And they changed the track from 2 to 4.
Yep.
No big deal. They kept making the same announcement, but when they did it, immediately on the overhang of the station, that was done right away. And I'm standing looking at one of the out front signs there, and it took probably another 2 minutes till it got done there.
On the out front
On
sign
the sign
versus,
with-
versus
I
ours,
think it's out, but the ones that show the listing of the trains coming.
okay.
And so it took like an extra minute, every 2 minutes. That it didn't happen instantaneously, I was
Yeah.
surprised.
That's interesting. I'll have to look.
Not a
into
big
that.
deal, but just something.
You know, it's probably updating, some of those are probably pre-programmed, just displays for set times. On the TVs versus the others that are connected into the train time app and our live system.
Okay.
So I'll have to look into that. That would be I'm
Just a
I'm
guess.
not a technologist, just so, but that's typically, sometimes with the TVs, it's just like, you know. The upfront, it's pre-programmed ads or pre-programmed things where it just shows something on a TV. So you have to update the graphic and send it over versus something that has a live feed. Would be the thing that makes,
Maybe it's not out front, it just does a vertical,
Okay.
black vertical sign.
Okay.
This morning I got on an Ossity and we had, this happens once in a
so
while.
we're trying to get into the waiting room. Sorry.
We had a train was supposed to be on track 2. And all of a sudden it pops in on track 4.
Hmm,
Well, that's okay, it's just across the platform, you can see it there.
yeah,
But if it were on one of the other, you know.
Oh, that's a big problem.
yeah, then you have,
Right, that happens at Kobe sometimes, you have to go upstairs.
Yeah.
And they kept
The last
apologizing,
minute, the very last
but they kept apologizing, the train was coming in now on track 4. I mean, that was I guess it's part of the thing, but you don't have to apologize that you just changed the track. If you went to track 3, that would be apologize. That would be a problem.
yes,
Consider force honoring regularly for one reason. You don't have the money to build physical transfers between railroad and subway trains at certain stations like Ransom Terminal, Margaret Hill, Yankee Stadium.
I don't know.
I don't see
In
it.
other words, you have Mark Hill Station. Okay, and nearby the one track to 25th Street. There's no physical transfer between 2 stations. If there was, you wouldn't have to cross on it.
Oh,
Like Yankee
It's not
Stadium,
gonna happen.
Yeah, and we're different,
Yeah.
we're different
It's not-
agencies. We operate separately. We're not gonna have free transfers between all of them. No, that's not the. That's a lot of different things going on.
It's not BMT, no AMD, no AMT.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing about, knowing about delays when you're on it, is it like, is this just my train that's running slow through my, or is this like, oh my God, all the trains at the Grand Central are backed up. You know what? I better bail at Point Dival, Marble, whatever, or 125th Street or something and try to get on the subway. You know,
So a lot of those, again, depending on where you're coming from, there aren't necessarily a spot to transfer and bail. Spain Dival, you can do, if you're coming in on Hudson, you know, if you're on the Harlem or New Haven, it's at a point at. I mean, I was on a New Haven train, it's one of those where you don't have any stops after Mount Vernon, you're not into 125th, you're there until you get there, and you know. It's also one of those things that was announced that it's because of train traffic in front of us, so, and when you look out the windows and you see other trains slowing down in some of the. Merger points where you have some congestion, it becomes a little obvious that it's not just your train, luckily. On some of these times, and based on the announcements, we don't necessarily announce publicly. For a lot of reasons, what causes some of these delays, unless it's some. So depending on what the cause of the delay is and how long of a delay it is going to be, you know, lots of times we don't necessarily announce to everyone, oh. What is causing one specific thing.
that said, like. Earlier this week, I stumbled upon this website. It was radar.mta.info. Which is like, oh, this is it. This shows you like all the trains backed up going into Grand Central or something like that. And
Actually, I'm familiar with that one for
Oh.
us, so.
Who did?
radar.mta.info.
I have the one for one.
It looks like this,
Yeah.
right? And it's just a graphical representation of where
all of our.
all the.
See them?
Yeah, you see them?
Yeah, it's like flight radar.
Yeah.
It's a
With
live
pictures.
thing.
And I'm like, wow, that's.
That sort of
is-
like rolling
that's
stock
cool.
number.
I would,
That actually is real time, that shows you where.
Yeah, that,
And
I mean, that looks
I-
like the same
Radar.
information that we have.
Dots.
Control.
On
Control
sites
center.
that I've seen
And I'm like,
dots. That way, but-
Are there other websites like this
Yeah.
that are kind of hidden
I got the one out.
features that like pop out and go like, "Yeah, you can see this.
Considering I didn't know of that one, I'm
Yeah.
not sure, but I.
I'm curious about it.
Here's the one out, here's the one out.
To radar on the MTA app.
You have the one out there?
That's not.
They turn it on and off.
Now.
That's
There
not
was an
MTA, so they
MTA.
wouldn't
love this.
put it there.
I do.
Yeah.
I don't think that they would
Fun to watch.
advertise for someone else.
No,
That would be, yeah.
It's also a security. thing.
That's all I got.
And this is supposed to be, it shows out of service trains, it shows.
It's not.
Okay, do we have anything else? Is there any new business, anything
Here.
to bring up?
Oh, halfway back to that social media update, from the minutes from last meeting. It just says like, a new map of Grand Central and Grand Central Madison can be found here, but. It's like a hyperlink that doesn't show up in the minute, when you should put the URL in. for that.
Oh,
It
it should have clicked, link,
Well, I did click it.
yeah.
No, but I'm like looking at the paper.
Oh, okay,
It's not
I get what
like
you're saying. You
everything-
wanted it physically, gotcha, yeah.
Yes.
Makes sense.
It would be nice if the Metro Railroad was able to provide more service to from Station Station. The service to see
From where?
service to from Station Station.
That's, you have to talk to CDOT about it, that's not us.
What
It's-
station?
That's run by Connecticut DOT. They're the ones who are commissioning that.
I
Okay,
have a question. Does anybody, I don't know if this may be a little early for this, but as part of the Grand Central Madison operation, MTA instituted what they call, I forget what they call, but it's like an interline ticket between Metro North and the Long Island Railroad.
The combo ticket.
Poughkeepsie, you get a ticket to Montauk and it's $8 extra for the Long Island segment of the trip, or vice versa. Does anybody know how many of those are being sold?
I can get the information, it's only
Interested in
been
hearing that.
up for, but. It's only been up for a short period of time, I know with a lot of these things, they start to trend up, but I can look into it.
You can buy those on the ticket machines, I assume,
so you.
And then, yeah,
or the ticket office.
Yeah, so one of my friends asked about the percentage of ridership that are going to New Penn, Grand Central Madison, the breakdown, Atlantic Terminal and Hunts Point. I know you only have one of those, but if you could, ask your colleagues on the way out, is a joint effort to do that.
we'll have all the numbers coming back again on Monday. So I know we always,
As long as it's included.
yeah, I know it's ticked up. I typically they look at the breakdown between, yeah, those are the two that they
We've
really.
also said that the Atlantic Terminal is.
But just the breakdown between, the split between those two is what they look at. Because those are the two
Of
within.
course, but people are all.
Yeah. The others, people are going for different reasons, it will be different. So it's not really an apple, not the same type of comparison compared to other things.
Sure.
I guess it would be interesting to see like Hunts Point, how, or some of the, how that has been affected by Madison, and what people are transferring there, but, you know. I'll much more of a Long Island side
Right.
question, so we
All
can.
right, well, if you send it to.
Yeah,
to us,
Yep, if I speak to Hector or Nick or all of them, know and see what's going on with that.
I think that's what it is. All right, anything else? You have old business? It wasn't any. Here we had, well, the old business is not here, so we don't have it. Now, remember who was the going to give the report is not in attendance today, so we know what business. All
So
right.
that was the person added to Zoom. Did that give us a forum?
No, you said.
No, Peter.
Yeah.
He was one who even jumped off.
I think it didn't notify us, it just.
Yeah, usually it makes like a thing.
Yeah.
He said someone's trying to get in. I looked at the window. I'm like, we're on the 12th floor.
Yeah.
I would like to point out that since there are 7 people on the council, if I was on the council, it would not
Yeah.
change the number of people needed for a quorum.
Right.
Or,
Actually, had 8 people.
are
Or
there,
actually, no, this is no, this is 7. Yeah. Sorry.
see, I would,
It's not up to us.
no, but
So there's some changes being considered in Albany about open meetings law. What would be required for a quorum, particularly for meetings among disability specific groups. But I think that everyone is finding that the legislation that went through with the budget last year made it hard to pull together an in-person quorum. And that's been something that they're looking at changing. So we're keeping our eye on that. Reinvent Albany has taken has spearheaded a lot of that. We're working with them and the Committee on Open Government as well to see what we can do, because it's today we wouldn't have had a quorum probably anyway, since 3 of our members were unable to join us regardless. And I don't know where Rich is, but Richard, in terms of your application, we need to increase our membership from Westchester, because they're the
I'm not moving.
yeah,
No, we don't want you to move. We need you here.
we don't want you to move, but we need to increase our membership from Westchester, and I've been having conversations to start with Joan McDonald about talking about increasing that. So Walter and Roz, when you see Joan or want to reach out to her, she's aware of the situation, and Emily as well. But the governor's appointments office has told me that in order for us to fill any of our other vacancies, first we have to fill Westchester.
And what was the last time we had a quorum for this meeting?
Not this past month, but we did in January.
That was after the.
Yeah, that's
Westchester
all. We had a
County
meeting with the county
The
executive.
county executive's office that we were up.
And I was on in.
So would we, when,
No.
I guess that's what I was thinking about, because it seems like we're having not just an occasional non-quorum meeting, but it seems to be the pattern. And
It's not just this council.
Oh,
Yeah.
but I'm just looking for, I'm the problem solution guy, so I'm just wondering whether we need to survey the members to see if the time works, or if you don't have a quorum, move the meeting or something. I don't know. It's just a thought. I would like to know if there's anything that can be done in order to enable people to participate, because when you can do the open meeting, posting or come, that should get up the floor.
Agree. I mean, we heard from one person today that they were unable to make it, one person yesterday that they were unable to make it, and one person the day before yesterday. So it also, we understand that last minute things come up. The real solution is filling our membership,
Oh,
so
yeah.
that we don't have to come down to, it makes such a small difference with the one.
So Walter, I will reach out to Joan McDonald like this week or early next week. And then in 2 or 3 weeks, you reach out to her so that we'll have 2 hits.
Okay.
As opposed to us both doing it at one time.
And I'll follow up with her as well and congratulate her on her Manhattan Chamber of Commerce Woman of the Year recognition. That is where I most recently put myself in her path. I will see her in a couple of weeks in Atlanta as well. Assuming I'm better, which I will be.
Check, so.
Surely.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it. Motion to adjourn.
I move when you adjourn.
Second. Oh, no, okay.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Okay. Bye.
Kara, can you just check your email, please?
Sorry?
Just
Yes.
check your email. All right, thank you.
Yes, I'm so glad you told me about the Metro North